Hello, everyone. Benjamin Lindsay here, managing editor at Backstage. We are sitting with Nico Santos today, who, of course, is one of the stars on NBC's and Peacock's Superstore. That beloved series is coming to an end on March 25th with an hour-long series finale, and he's been playing Mateo to great effect for the last 6 years. So really excited to be picking his brain on bringing this character to life. His journey through the performing arts, his advice to others, all the good backstage stuff. Let me see if I can bring him up here, if he's in our audience, and we'll get going from there. Hi there.
Hello.
Oh, there we go. My name is Ben. It's nice to meet you, Nico.
Nice to meet you. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for joining me today.
Of course.
Especially today. I was emailing your team before. I totally would have understood if we decided to push a day or two. The news out of Atlanta is just absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
So, thanks for setting aside the time. I'm sure you have other things on your mind.
It's been yeah, man. It's been a rough night. Honestly, all the uptick in Asian hate crimes has been very paralyzing. I haven't really said much on social media. It's just been a very paralyzing fear. I mean, for me, and I mean that's not an excuse. It's just how I've been reacting to all this crazy stuff that's been going around me. And I think last night with what happened, it just sort of was just the last nail in the coffin. I was like, I can't anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I just wanted to say my heart goes out to you and all Asian Americans, and stop Asian hate. It's despicable what's been happening in the uptick. And but I do appreciate you sharing your time with me. So thanks for jumping on.
I welcome distractions. So.
Yes, of course, of course. We are here to talk about Superstore, that beloved sitcom on NBC and Peacock. I mean, you've been with this character now for 6 seasons. It's wrapping up on March 25th. How do you feel with it finally kind of coming down the line?
I mean, obviously it's bittersweet. I never in a million years thought that we would, make it to 6 seasons, 113 episodes. It's not a lot of shows sort of reach that milestone. For me, Superstore was my big break, and I was just so happy to sort of be part of, to be working at that level, because that's the big dream is to be able to get a job as an actor, that was kind of like a regular 9 to 5 that was that paid really well, and it was a lot of fun, and it was definitely a dream job, and I definitely feel like I won the lottery. I keep saying this in every interview that I do, but it really is. It was like the perfect storm where everybody in the cast was just amazing. The creative crew, the entire crew. It was just like a joy to work on, and I'm really sad that I don't get to drive in the lot and then say hi to my friends every morning. It's really sad.
Yeah. It must feel like an absence after such a long time. But what a gift. I mean, not only for this to be your big break, but I feel like it's a gift for any actor to be able to live with the character for so long, to find out new things as the years go on, find deeper and funnier ways to explore him. What's been the most gratifying part for you about just kind of getting to explore him for 6 years?
Well, I mean, honestly, just the fact that I was actually playing a character so close to myself. I know that, as actors, we're supposed to transform and inhibit other people, blah, blah, blah. But, when you go into this industry, especially if you're a person of color or if you are LGBT, a lot of the roles you go out for are either like I've tried out for every Asian part there imaginable, even though I wasn't Japanese, I wasn't Chinese, I wasn't Korean. They just see Asian, they're like, here, go play an Asian person, even though you're not the right type of Asian person to play that role. And to be able to play a character that was so close to my experience and so close to who I am was, I that just doesn't happen very often. And I sort of really relished in the fact that I could draw from my own experience, but still be able to put out a very different interpretation of what a queer Filipino person could and would be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pulling from your own experience from a performance standpoint, but did you also find that your own experience informed the way that he was written, and maybe was that a dialogue between you and the writers' room in terms of authenticity of this character?
Yeah, it was, again, I've mentioned this in other interviews. The character Mateo wasn't written as a queer Filipino character. It was
Hmm.
written as a straight Latino character.
Okay.
And I just sort of like I got the sides for the audition, and it was very much a guy who was super competitive, super ambitious. It was a shark and would just cut somebody off and cut you to get ahead.
Hmm.
And I worked in retail, and I worked with those queens on the sales floor who
Uh-huh.
would stab your mom to get a sale. And I knew this person, even though of course that person was not, written as queer Filipino. I was just like, I know this guy, and I just sort of like created this character based on my experience with my other coworkers that
Hmm.
I've had. And they kind of
Yes.
they they liked it, and they eventually changed the character and adapted it to me.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. And my understanding, I mean, to go all the way back, your road to getting cast on this show was kind of a winding one. I read that you started in costuming at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival,
Mhm.
and then that eventually turned into stand-up, which eventually turned into kind of hitting the audition room. So
Yeah.
can you tell us about your early days with the performing arts and what those kind of looked like?
Yeah, so I had moved from the Philippines to Oregon when I was a teenager, and the
Hmm.
high school I went to happened to have like a really robust music and theater program, which really like we didn't have that kind of super structured arts education in the Philippines. At least in my school, we didn't. So when I moved to the United States and had this opportunity, I was like, I found my band of freaks. These
Hmm.
are the people that I'm supposed to be hanging out with, the drama geeks. This is my home,
Yeah.
and it was great. I found like the group of people, and I really thought that I would enter into a career in the theater as an actor. So I went to uh, college in Southern Oregon University in Ashland, where the Oregon Shakespeare Festival was,
Hmm.
and with the intention of being an actor. And the combination of not so nurturing professors and teachers, with me really not being the right fit for that program, sort of just um, and me running out of money. Honestly, that's why I
Hmm.
dropped out of college. But the college really. I don't know. They just didn't see me fitting into the program. I mean,
Hmm.
our acting teacher often liked to say, "You may love the art, but the art doesn't love you." That was his thing that he loved to say during acting class.
Yeah.
um, and eventually, they saw that I had an interest in a knack for costume design, so they really pushed me in that direction. And then eventually, I got a job at the festival doing wardrobe, and one of the actors I was in charge of dressing just sort of like on the fly was like, "Hey, you're really funny. You should do stand up. Like that's what you should be doing." And it
Mhm.
had never occurred to me till he mentioned it, even though I was a huge fan of stand up. I
Right,
was like,
right.
I just, I think while I was in theater, I was naive and thought that the only entryway to performing and being on stage was being a theater actor.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I discovered stand up comedy that I was like, oh, I can be on stage, I can perform, I can say my point of view without having to do, Shakespeare and Chekhov, which I love watching, but I could just never, at the time at least, never see myself doing it, or I wasn't excelling in all these like theater things that I was supposed to be excelling at. And it was really
Hmm.
just discouraging for me. But it wasn't until I found comedy that I was like, oh, it was like an artist finding your medium.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, I'm
Artist.
supposed to be painting with this instead of watercolor.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I imagine that that was also a turning point where you realize the things that maybe these professors were kind of projecting as limitations or whatever you want to call them actually ended up being your assets to finding your voice as a comedian for kind of finding your niche, you know?
Absolutely. I never, like it was that program was all about like pushing you towards like going to grad school and like finding your type in the theater, like they definitely separated like this person's going to be like the leading man or an ingenue type, and you are going to
Mhm.
be a character actor. So the fact that I've been able to have a career based solely on the things that people said that I wasn't that wasn't going to be an advantage for me is
Mhm.
just a real blessing.
And do you find, are you still writing? Do write your own comedy material and whatnot?
Yeah, obviously the pandemic has
Yeah.
has put a little stop on performing in live venues, but so I haven't done stand up in more than a year now because also when I was doing Superstore, the schedule was kind of crazy. Like
Yeah.
after shooting for 15 hours, I didn't want to go to an open mic at a bar, so
Like, yeah.
I was sort of like, I was fortunate enough to be a working actor full time, so I kind of just focused on that in the last 5, 6 years.
And what's next for you then? Obviously, Superstore is wrapping and things are going back into production slowly but surely. Do you have anything in the pipeline that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I'm just sort of auditioning for a new job, right? So like
Mhm.
all pilot season, this season looks very different. So I'm just sort of rummaging through whatever my agent sent me,
Mhm.
scouring through like projects that I might be interested in. I'm also working on a couple of things on on producing side that I should. There'll be an announcement about that pretty soon. So, but I
All right.
can't talk about it just yet. So,
Excellent. Excellent. We're looking forward to those.
yeah.
Our audience today, it being for Backstage, a lot of them are kind of the working actors of the world. Do you have
Mhm.
any audition advice? How do you typically prepare for something like pilot season when you're doing the self tapes, you're going into the room and whatnot?
Oh my God. I long, before, in the before times, I was always like, I hate going to the room. I would much prefer like a self-tape. I'd rather just like audition in the room and do that. Or rather, I'm sorry, I got that reversed. Before, in the before times, I would sort of prefer the self-tapes because you can do whatever you want. Now that
Right.
everything is in self-tapes, I'm like, I would kill to just sort of wait in the waiting
Yeah.
room with all the actors that you know who get called for the same part,
Right.
and sort of have that experience again. I don't know. I guess the one thing I do like about self tapes is that you can do, whatever take you want and you can do it
Mhm.
over and over again. My whole thing is that I am sort of crazy OCD and a perfectionist, and like, even though the take could have been like completely perfect, I like tend to just like do it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And, I think it's important to sort of like be able to take a breath and look at it and be like, no, this is like, this is as good as it's gonna get. You can't
Hmm.
overwork it anymore. Just send it in because, at the end of the day, it's really like it's not up to you. It's you just got to give the best take you think you have, and you could go over it a million times and you probably like nitpick it and find something wrong with it. So just find a tape that you're, even just like halfway confident with, and then just like you've done your best, send it
Yeah.
off, release it to the world
It's
because you
both a
can't wear
blessing,
that.
right? Blessing and a curse to have the opportunity to fine tune it, and then also the perfectionist in you comes out, and you never want to send anything in because it's never good enough. I
Yeah,
totally hear you
exactly.
there. I hear you there. Well, as a final question for you, again, with our working actor audience, and just considering the way that you kind of found your footing and landed Superstore, and now looking ahead to exciting new things,
Mhm.
what advice would you give yourself when you were first getting your start? Something that you've maybe learned through your journey that would have been helpful to know
I
back.
really wish I would have explored other opportunities or other paths to performance.
Yeah.
Again, when I was younger, I just thought that theater was the only way to get an acting career going. And that having the pedigree of like theater education, and I'm not saying don't get training. Training is important, and I got my training from doing stand up for 15 years. That was my education. Training is extremely important, and doing the work is important. But there are other ways to be able to get there, to be able to get to becoming a working actor than
Mhm.
just going to acting school and going to theater school. And, you know, I'm 40, I'll be 42 in April, so I'm a little bit older than some of y'all. And back in the day, there was no channels, there was no YouTube, there wasn't this sort of like community of creators. But now for anybody out there who's wanting to sort of get into entertainment, get into acting, there's so many paths and venues for you to be able to explore your creativity, not just with theater. You can create literally whatever you want and put it out there on
Yeah.
social media. So don't be sort of bogged down on the yeah, on a sort of like that path of like, I gotta go to theater school. If I didn't go to Juilliard, I'm never gonna be a working actor, because that's certainly not the case.
Yeah.
Don't let your, you know, the fact that you don't have that pedigree stop you from pursuing it.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Get out there and do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Great. Well, Nico, this has been great to pick your brain a little bit. Thanks for spending some time with us and Backstage today.
Of course.
Congratulations on such an awesome run with Superstore, and reminder to those folks watching, it's wrapping up on March 25th with an hour-long special finale. Can't wait to see how it all goes down. But Nico, stay well, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye.